Okay, I'm going to go over the organisms and environments quiz because you are required to do corrections on your test, and you will have to explain why you missed the question and why the correct answer is the correct answer. So, first of all, if you struggled on the test, I want you to make sure that you're doing your strategies, you're highlighting keywords, underlining the question, and you're proving every answer because I feel like this is really going to help you. I know kiddos that I have talked to in class and asked them to go back and do their strategies. Quite often they realize they got the answer incorrect because they failed to pay attention to important information or a particular keyword. Okay, so question 1. Which of the following is most likely to cause a change in the genetic traits in an isolated population of a ground-dwelling lizard species? So we need to highlight key information here. So it says, which of the following is most likely to cause a change in the genetic traits of an isolated population of lizard species? I did have some kiddos asking me what the word isolated meant. So if that was the struggle for you, isolated means they're alone. Um, they're not around many other species. Okay. Um, if I put you in a room by yourself, you're isolated. Okay. So when I'm thinking about this, I would also hope that you are connecting this to the fish sticks lab because this was very much, this is very similar to our fish sticks lab. It may not be the exact same case, but in our fish stick lab, we had fish that were first our yellowfish were struggling to blend in, but after a environmental change occurred and killed off the algae, our genetically dominant green fish could no longer camouflage as well. So that species went extinct very quickly because of a change in their environment. So let's take a look at this. A says the exposure of an individual lizard in the population to radiation that caused a mutation that is not passed to its offspring. So coming back to my question, it says cause a change in genetic traits. Well, here in my, oh, I don't want that. Let me get my eraser. Okay, here in my question, it says genetic traits, but in my answer here, this says it is not passed on to its offspring. So if it's not passed on to its offspring, then it is not genetic. It's not a genetic change. So that's why A is not going to work. Let's look at B. An unusually dry summer in the lizard population's ecosystem. So again, we're looking for genetic traits to change. An unusually dry summer is going to be a very short period of time, and it's not going to be long enough to cause genetic changes. Oh my goodness, I keep grabbing the wrong thing here. That's what I mean to do. An unusually dry summer. One summer does not necessarily mean that there's going to be changes genetically. Now, if it happened continually over a long period of time, the environment which was much drier, then we could see something like in our fish sticks lab. If a certain color out of that species now is blending in better, like in our yellow fish could blend in a little easier with the background once the algae died. Well, it takes many, many generations for us to see those genetic changes. So one summer is not going to work for us. Okay. An introduction of an invasive predator that preys on the brightest color individuals in the lizard population. So first of all, I would hope that this grabs your attention. The predator is preying on the brightest colored individuals. If you remember in our fish stick lab and in one of the videos that we were watching, by choosing to prey on a particular color, for instance, at the beginning, it was our yellowfish that could not blend in. Our yellowfish were being killed off before they could reproduce. So here, our brightest colored individuals may die before they can pass on their genes. And if they die before they're able to reproduce, then they are not able to pass on their genetic traits. So C is our correct answer here. But if you chose the last one, let's take a look at that. A fast-moving wildfire burns the canopy of trees in the lizard population's ecosystem. Again, we have a very short ecological change. So it's just like our summers being dry for 1 year. That one event is not enough to change a lizard population because we'd have to have something happening over a long period of time, causing a certain group in a population to not be able to reproduce. So this is a short period of time, so it's not going to be enough to cause genetic changes. Okay, let's look at question number 2. A recent study concluded that about 90% of all large predatory fish, such as tuna, have disappeared from the world's oceans in the past 50 years. Which of these is most likely the direct cause of the loss? So here we do have a question to underline. Which of these is most likely the direct cause of this loss? Okay, now I'm going to highlight keywords. A recent study concluded that about 90% of all large predatory fish, such as tuna, have disappeared from the world's oceans in the past 50 years. Okay, so one major thing I've noticed is it's taking 50 years for this to happen. Okay, so that is a long period of time. This is not a short ecological change. This is happening over a long period of time. So let's take a look. Urban development near the coast. First of all, if you didn't remember urban development, that's like building cities or neighborhoods. Okay, so building our cities near the coast, yes, it might cause some pollution, but I've got to think about, would that cause 90% of all large predatory fish to die off? I'm not sure. So I'm going to go to the next one. Commercial harvesting from the ocean. Remember, commercial harvesting is like a companies that go and fish and sell the fish as part of their business. Okay, so this would be the fishing industry. And so that makes me think I might have a hint here because we eat tuna. So I would think that this might be my cause. Okay, climate change on Earth. Have we seen a big enough change in the world's oceans to cause 90% of predatory fish like tuna to die over the past 50 years? And then finally, we have acid precipitation. Well, this is a short-term change. This would be one day it rained and there was acid rain. So this is not going to take 50 years. So when I look back at this, looking at the clues that I have here in my question, I'm thinking the answer is definitely G, because commercial harvesting is the fishing industry, and we do eat tuna, and we have been fishing for a very long time. This could take 50 years or more, and it is a tuna that we would be harvesting commercially from the ocean. Okay, number 3. The graph below shows the range of water conditions preferred by 3 species of fish in an Ozark stream. Water with which of these conditions would cause the most competition for resources among all 3 species? Okay, let's see. So says water with which of these conditions would cause the most competition among all 3 species. So that's very important. We need all 3, and we need competition. And anytime you see competition, you should think they have something in common. Okay, I'm not going to be competing with you if we don't need something similar. I'm not going to fight over a piece of food that I'm not going to eat, or I'm not going to fight over space in water with temperatures that I don't prefer. So if you look here, it gives us our range from warmer to colder, water with many suspended particles to clearer, flows slower to flows faster. And the bars underneath each fish species shows you the range that they like. For instance, this fish likes water on the colder end. He's not going to be over here where the warmer water is, because that bar is not reaching over here. So if I look for something that they share, that they have in common, I'm going to find where the bars tend to overlap. What space do they overlap? Well, it's really here in the middle. So what I would do is go through these questions and say, am I very cold? No, that doesn't sound right to me. So I don't think A is going to work. Okay. Am I very warm? Warm would be down here at this end. So I'm not going to think it's that. Mild temperatures. Mild means like if you're thinking mild salsa, right? It's not real spicy, but it's not going to taste like ketchup either. So you're kind of in the middle. So mild's going to sound like it's in the middle for me. Okay. Some suspended particles. Well, it's less than many, but it's not quite clear. So some sounds like it would go here. Okay. Flows very fast. I'm kind of in the middle here. Fast is down here. So I don't know about this one. I don't think it's going to work. Okay, mild temperatures. We already said that was good. Some suspended particles. We said that was good. Flows at a medium speed. All right, I think medium sounds like it would be in the middle. So I think this one will work for me. The answer is going to be D. Okay, number 4. Which organisms in the food web shown above compete for the same food source in this environment? Okay. Which organisms in the food web shown above compete for the same food source in this environment? So I'm going to look, let's see, organisms in the food web compete for the same food source in this environment. So I think the big key is same. So anytime you see a question like this, you should go through one by one. Okay, so grasshoppers. I'm going to look at grasshoppers and snakes first. So here's my grasshoppers, here's my snakes. Okay, so let's see, my grasshopper's food source. Well, it's got to be my grasses, because my energy is leaving the grasses and going to the grasshoppers. My food source for my snakes is 2 things here. He's getting energy from frogs and from grasshoppers. So it's not going to work, because it's not sharing a food source as my grasshoppers. Remember, if they were having this, sharing the same food source, it would look like this. Energy would be leaving grasses and going to the grasshopper and the snake. So since that's not what I see, I know that's not going to work for me. So I'm going to mark this one out. Okay, let's look at hawks and frogs next. I'm going to erase this to make it a little easier for you to see. Okay, so we're looking at hawks and frogs. Okay, so my frog's food source is the grasshopper. My hawk's food source, frogs and snakes. So again, they're not sharing a food source. They do not have arrows coming from the same food source to them. So I'm going to say no, this answer is incorrect. Okay, so let's look at the next set. Frogs and snakes. All right. So my frog's food source is a grasshopper. My snake has two food sources, frogs and grasshopper. See, now I see my grasshopper has a food source coming to him from, or my frogs have the grasshopper as a food source. My snake has the grasshopper as a food source. So I'm thinking this is my answer, but you should always check. So let's make sure. My last one, decomposers and grasses, and I think I had a lot of people pick this one. Decomposers do have energy coming from everything in this food web. But grasses, where do they get their energy from? Mr. Sun. They're getting their energy from the sun. They take in the sun's energy for photosynthesis in order to produce glucose. Decomposers are breaking down all of these living things once they die, because that's what decomposers do. They break down dead organisms and organic matter for their energy. So because they are not getting energy from the sun, they cannot compete with grasses. So J is not going to work. So it has to be the frogs and the snakes because they both have grasshoppers as an energy source. Okay, number 5. A student examines the winged insect shown below. Based on the dichotomous key, in what order should this insect be classified? All right, so I would highlight dichotomous key, and we're trying to figure out what this insect would be classified as. So to prove a question with a dichotomous key, you don't have to write as much out next to your question. So this one, you can really just highlight the steps you used. So let's look at 1A. Insect has extremely long prothorax. And notice if you don't know what that means, they tell you in parentheses, neck. So does he have an extremely long neck? Doesn't look like it to me. Let's see. Insect has a short or no prothorax. I would think it has no or a very short one. So let's go to 3. Wings are armor-like with membranous hind wings underneath. So this is a June bug, and I see he does have these 2 armor-like wings here with the membranous wings underneath. So I would think it's that one. I'm going to check 3B. Wings are not armor-like. He does have that armor-like layer of wings on top, so I would choose this one. So I can see my answer is C. Okay, number 6. Plants use energy from sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide to produce sugar. Which structure is found only in plant cells and helps plants capture energy from the sunlight? Okay, so they give me a hint. They're already talking about photosynthesis. They're wanting to know a structure found only, there's a big key word, in plant cells that helps capture energy from sunlight. A vacuole is both plants and animals. Remember, it stores waste and water. Okay. A nucleus is found in all eukaryotes, and plants and animals are both eukaryotic. Okay. Chloroplasts, I know those are in plants only. Cell membrane is in both plants and animals, but I know that plants also have a cell wall. Okay, so chloroplast, plants only, and it does capture sunlight. So I know my answer is H. Okay, number 7. A group of students prepared a table listing the types of reproduction that occur in several organisms. Based on this information, which of the organisms can produce offspring that are genetically identical to the parent organism? So our big key words here are genetically identical. Okay, so let's take a look. I should know that asexual means one parent. And that means that my offspring will be identical because identical means genetically the same. Like identical twins, they look the same. If I'm only getting genetics from one parent, then I don't have any other options. I'm going to look pretty much identical to my parent. So I'm looking for organisms that have asexual reproduction. So if I go back up at my chart, amoebas, asexual, yeasts, both sexual and asexual, cats are only sexual, hydras, both sexual and asexual reproduction, frogs are only sexual, ferns, both sexual and asexual reproduction. So that very easily I can see I have 4 answer choices. It's not ferns only, amoebas and yeasts only. No. Cats are not because they're sexual reproduction. So it must be D. Amoebas, yeasts, hydras, and ferns only. Okay, number 8. What parts of a cell are most likely involved with inherited traits? So when I go here, I'm looking for parts of a cell involved with inherited traits. And I'm hoping right off the bat with inherited traits, you're thinking about DNA, okay? Because that's where our traits come from. So I need to look for parts of a cell that have to do with DNA. So I would go through my answer choices like this: chromosomes, yes; genes, yes; vacuoles, no. Vacuoles are for storage. So looking at G, chromosomes, yes; genes, yes. And where do I find the chromosomes? In the nucleus. So that's possible. Let's check H. DNA, yes; genes, yes; mitochondria, no. Remember, mitochondria are like what we call the powerhouse of the cell. They're like the battery, they produce energy for the cell. So they are not involved with inherited traits. Okay, the next one then: DNA, yes; nucleus, yes; cell membrane, no. Remember, the cell membrane controls what goes in and out of the cell. It does not determine genetic traits. So it should be G, chromosomes, genes, and both of those are found inside of the nucleus. Okay, number 9. The characteristics of a particular organism are listed below. Characteristics of an organism: multicellular, is autotrophic, has cell walls, has cell nuclei, can reproduce sexually or asexually. In which kingdom should this organism be classified? Okay, so I'm going to go through answer choice by answer choice. My fungi, I know it is heterotrophic. and it says autotrophic. So I'm going to mark that out. Okay. Eubacteria. What gets it wrong? Well, it's multicellular. And I know bacteria is single-celled or unicellular. So that's not going to work for me. Plant? It is multicellular. It is autotrophic. I know that only plants have cell walls. It does have a nuclei. And plants, some produce sexually, some produce asexually. Some are capable of doing both. So this is a maybe. What about animalia? Well, we've got to think about animals, and we know animals have no cell wall. So that can't be my correct answer. So it must be C. Okay, number 10. The growth of which of the following usually occurs first in primary succession on bare rock? So it gives you lots of hints here. What occurs first in primary succession, and it's on bare rock. So to begin with, first you should be thinking pioneer species. And we need something that grows on bare rock. So if I look at trees, shrubs, and grasses, I know they need soil with nutrients to grow. So lichens are going to be the only thing that will grow on our bare rock. Lichens are actually a combination of fungus and algae that can grow on the bare rock. They need much fewer nutrients in order to grow, and they don't have to have that nutritious soil. Okay, our last one. The food webs below model relationships among the organisms in two ecosystems. Which ecosystem would be more likely to survive if a disease killed all the grasses? Okay, well, which ecosystem would be more likely to survive if disease killed the grasses? So first, I'm going to look. This is grass. This is grass. But these over here are not grasses. Okay. So this one has only grass. And this one has, I don't know, bushes or shrubs too. Well, in order to survive, I have to have an alternate food source. So here my butterfly is connected to the grasses as an energy source, but it also has a second one with the bush or shrub there. Okay, so it might not be well for the mice because this guy doesn't look like he has a food source. And it might not do well for the crickets. But my butterfly would survive, and it looks like even though my raccoon is losing a food source, I can look here and see he has another food source over here. So he's still going to survive. And my deer might eat grasses, but he also has another food source in the shrub. So he's still going to survive. If I look down here at this one, well, all of these herbivores right here only have a food source coming from the grasses. And if all of these guys die, eventually everyone up here is going to die as well. So it's not looking good. So let's take a look at our answer choices. It says the forest ecosystem, which that was our top one, okay, because most of the animals eat other organisms. Well, we just saw that most of them do have another food source, so that's a maybe. The grassland ecosystem, well, I already said they're not going to survive. So actually, I can mark out B and D because grassland system's not going to survive. So let's look at C, the forest ecosystem, because it has 3 top predators. Well, It does have multiple top predators here with no one consuming it. But the question says which one would be most likely to survive because of grasses. So it needs to be related. My answer I choose needs to be related to the grasses dying. So having 3 top predators has nothing to do with the grasses dying. So it has to be A, the forest ecosystem, because most of the animals can eat other organisms.